Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing well as usual. So back today with another video, this time with a contest entry. This is a contest entry for a competition being run by Geoff over at Mendicant Media. So if you don't know Geoff's channel, how don't you? He's got a massive channel. He's doing this to actually celebrate reaching 3,000 subscribers. So congratulations, Geoff. Because he has a large number of subscribers, most of you are probably familiar with his channel, but if not, I'll leave the link in the description so you can go and check it out. Sorry, my phone's fucking up here. Yes, and he's an encyclopedia of metal, likes all genres of metal, especially some that I'm not so familiar with, like grindcore and gore grind. I mean, I do know them, but I'm just not overly aware of those genres. But yeah, and he likes all other kinds of genres of metal too. On top of that, he's a really nice guy, very chilled and soft-spoken Aussie bloke, and it's funny because his demeanor is sort of like a contrast to the extreme music that he listens to. But you may have heard me say this, I'm from Sydney originally, so I remember actually seeing Geoff at concerts back in the day. Like, we never knew each other, but you probably know how it is when you go to metal concerts in a city. You tend to see the same familiar faces at concerts, and I always remember him because he had a jacket with an AUTOPSY backpatch, and I thought, oh, that's cool because that's my favorite AUTOPSY album. So, and I think that's when I saw it. It was at Bloodlust 2003, which is an extreme Australian metal fest in Blacktown, Sydney. But anyway, yeah, go and check out Geoff's channel, and congratulations, Geoff. It's really well deserved for you to reach 3,000 subscribers because you're very knowledgeable and your videos are always interesting. So what Geoff has asked us to do today for this contest, because he's reached 3,000 subscribers, he decided that what we should do is make a video talking about 5 albums which mean something to us, 5 albums which were released when we were 30 years old. So everyone's going to be different, you know, born in different years. So in my case, in case the channel name wasn't a dead giveaway, I was born in 79. So the reason I called my channel Stormwind 79, I just wanted Stormwind, but that was already taken. So yeah, the year of my birth. So yep, time flies. It's absolutely incredible. Like, I thought I was old when I was 30, but anyway, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and it's interesting. That was an interesting year for metal. So when I was 30 years old, it was 2009. Interesting for a couple of reasons. That year, for some reason, even though I was already a fan of extreme metal and everything, that year I sort of took a backward step, and I was getting into delving deeper into more sort of classic and older metal bands like Scorpions and Black and Blue, and I was even getting really into some classic rock bands like The Doors a lot in that year. So, but of course I still listened to extreme metal anyway. And another reason why 2009 is an interesting year for metal is, even though first of all, a lot of the big bands which I really like did not release albums in that year, and secondly, a lot of the ones that I did released albums that I wasn't particularly into. So that's just maybe a coincidence. So I'll give you some examples of that. So I always forget the name of this album. For example, Dark Funeral released Angelus Exuro Pro Eternus, I always forget that Latin name, in 2009. Certainly not a bad album, but this is actually my 6th favorite Dark Funeral album. So they've got 7 in total. So this is my 2nd least favorite, only beating Atera Totus Sanctus, which is easily the worst in my opinion. Just nothing memorable on that album at all. So yeah, this one, it's like, there are 9 tracks. There's about 4 tracks which I really like, but the rest is kind of forgettable to me. And the sound is very compressed, but it's still worth it for those 4 songs. But I wouldn't say that this is an album which means a great deal to me. Like, Dark Funeral have done much better, like the top 5 albums are brilliant. Also in 2009, Marduk released Wormwood, so you probably heard me say ad nauseum that Marduk are my favorite black metal band. But if you watched my ranking video, spoiler alert, this is actually my least favorite of the Marduk albums. So out of all 15 albums they've done, this is my least favorite just by default. It's just not as memorable as the others, so there you go. Also, Nile in 2009 released Those Whom the Gods Detest. Yeah, so first of all, like George G said, Nile has never released a bad album. So like, this one is still definitely good, but it's just not a standout Nile album for me. That's the reason why it doesn't mean a great deal, but still a very good album. And also, Obituary released Darkest Day in 2009. Again, not a bad album, and it's Obituary doing Obituary. but it's just, again, this is probably by default the one that I play the least. So the song Left to Die is really good, like it's catchy, like it's got all those classic obituary elements, but yeah, for whatever reason I just didn't get into this one so much. So there are some examples of albums released in 2009 where I just didn't get into that much, but coming to my list now of ones which do mean something to me. What the fuck is this low battery? I thought I was charging and hopefully this doesn't run out. Anyway, yeah, so I hope I'm not disqualified for this, but believe it or not, because it was slim pickings in 2009, I could only find 4 albums which mean something to me. So I hope that's acceptable, Geoff, but if not, it's just for the fun of entering this contest anyway, so I won't waste time, especially before the battery runs out. So talking about albums released when I was 30 years old, which means something to me, the first one is Cannibal Corpse with Evisceration Plague. Now I'll just take this out. This is the censored cover, I believe, but I'm not sure about that. Kind of generic, boring cover, but don't let that fool you. It's a brilliant album. So this is Cannibal Corpse doing their classic style. So brutal death metal, which is, you know, incredibly fast, but there's also groovy parts. And I find why this album. Let me just say first of all, like I know a lot of people say that the Fisher era albums are not that memorable, but I would say most of the tracks on this album are standout and memorable. So I would, and in this case, like the majority of songs are my favorite. So I really like Priests of Sodom, that's a really hooky, catchy song. Also Scalding Hail, To Decompose, and A Cauldron of Hate. So the first 4 tracks are brilliant. I also really like Evidence in the Furnace, the title track Evisceration Plague, and Shatter Their Bones. Brilliant title, by the way. And just to let you know, I've never done an official Cannibal Corpse ranking because at the time I showed my Cannibal Corpse collection 5 years ago, I didn't own some of the more recent albums. Also, I don't own Tomb of the Mutilated because when some pricks broke into my car many years ago in Australia, they stole that from the glove box in addition to some Abominator albums. But anyway, if I'm rating this Cannibal Corpse album, I would say it comes up in the middle of all of their albums. And the only reason it's in the middle is because there are other albums which I happen to like more. But yeah, it means something to me because I actually bought this album a few years after it was released. I bought it when I was in Thailand before I had sent my music collection over here. So as a result, the handful of CDs I bought over here, I was listening to them all the time, and I listened to this one frequently, you know, when walking to the gym, when going to the gym. And I also really think it's a good return to form after Kill. So the Cannibal Corpse album Kill, which came out in 2006, I didn't really rate that album much, even though a lot of people say it's their favorite, and it's grown on me over the years. But this one, however, I think this is far superior to Kill. So if you disagree with me, that's fine. But yeah, this is like a really good Fisher era album from Cannibal Corpse, and like a lot of the Cannibal Corpse albums from the Fisher period, I think it's underrated. So yeah, Evisceration Plague by Cannibal Corpse, that's my first choice. So talking about another album released when I was 30, which means something to me, this is Hypocrisy with A Taste of Extreme Divinity. So you've heard me talking about my Hypocrisy collection on this channel if you've been subscribed for a while. But this album, it's Hypocrisy showing that they had developed their blackened melodic Swedish death metal sound to fine effect. The album features a lot of keyboards and clean guitars for eerie atmosphere, and a lot of the songs are memorable and anthemic, almost sing-along in quality, which I really like. So, of course, Hypocrisy started out as like brutal satanic death metal band, sort of playing in the vein of Deicide, but then over the years, they evolved into this blackened melodic style. And when I say melodic, it's not like Arch Enemy or Soilwork or something, but yeah, just it's melodic, but in its own unique way. And they have the blackened vocals, which Peter developed, maybe as a result of producing so many black metal bands at Abyss Studios. It sort of rubbed off on him. But this is a really great album. Like when I first bought this, I thought, yeah, it's pretty good, but it just keeps growing and growing on me. And there are so many good songs on this. Like I really like Weed Out the Weak. And like it's got such a melancholy atmosphere. I really love that. Also Global Domination, Taste the Extreme Divinity, Alive, The Quest, absolutely brilliant track, so atmospheric with those clean guitars, and also Tamed, Filled with Fear, that's got a very anthemic chorus. So this is one of so the reason why it means something to me is, again, I bought this in Thailand before I'd sent my music collection over here, so again, I listened to it frequently at the time, and it reminds me a lot of where I was working and living at the time, so it's kind of nostalgic, even though the job I was in at the time, it wasn't the best job. I liked the actual work, but the work conditions were not any good, but that's another story. But, you know, it evokes nostalgia anyway. And it also conjures images of Sweden in my mind, just because Hypocrisy often does with their style of music. So that's the next one, Hypocrisy, A Taste of Extreme Divinity. Okay, now moving away from extreme metal for a moment, going to my third choice of albums which mean something to me that were released when I was 30 years old. Up next we have Kiss with Sonic Boom. So everyone knows Kiss, of course. This was the first album to be released with members in full makeup since 1996's Psycho Circus. So Psycho Circus was the reunion album with all the original members, but on that album, the collaborations weren't as real as they purported to be, in the sense that Peter Criss's and Ace Frehley's contributions were minimal on that album. So, and I don't really think Psycho Circus is a very good album. This, however, I think it's brilliant. So this album is a proper return to the band's 1970s sound. And as I once described it, it sort of possesses the 70s flavor of classic 70s Kiss albums such as Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun, spliced with the strut, drive and heaviness of Revenge. So yeah, Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun are my two favorite 70s Kiss albums. This is very much in that vein. You can even see the artwork. It sort of resembles, it's a bit Rock and Roll Over-esque. And yeah, it's loaded with memorable, catchy and anthemic songs, very easy to sing along to, and there's a lot of excellent musicianship, and yeah, it's just catchy the whole way. Like there are literally no bad songs on this album. I really like them all, but some of my favorites would be Russian Roulette, Stand, Hot and Cold. Oh, Hot and Cold is like a reprise of Love 'Em Leave 'Em, my favorite song from Rock and Roll Over. Danger Us is a great song, and you know, this is the album I forgot to mention. It's got two of the newer members in makeup. So Tommy Thayer on lead guitar as the Spaceman, and Eric Singer on drums as the Catman. But you know, a lot of people rubbish them because they weren't new members, saying, oh, they were imposters. Yeah, but the fact is, the original members, Ace and Peter, as much as I love them, they left for their own reasons and the band decided to continue, and these new members did an excellent job. Like the song When Lightning Strikes, which Tommy Thayer sings, that's one of my favorite songs on the album. So there you go. Like, don't judge based on, you know, history or image or anything. What does the music sound like? So I think this album is absolutely excellent, and I do like it more than the album which came out after this, Monster. So yeah, the reason it means so much is actually I was sort of a late starter to Kiss. So like the 3 years prior to 2009, I delved deeply into Kiss, and like for about 2 years I listened to pretty much nothing but Kiss, like 90% of the time. And then just as I was up to speed, then this album was released, and it was sort of like the culmination of that whole listening experience, and I absolutely love it. So I still think, like, I've done a ranking of Kiss albums from the 90s and beyond, and for me this one rates second only after Revenge, but great album. So Kiss with Sonic Boom, released in 2009. And the final and fourth album which means something to me, an album which was released when I was 30 years old. Just a moment. How the fuck am I going to do this? Techno Fear, just wait. So, you know what? I might have to ad-lib this. Like, don't always rely on the notes. Yeah, so up next we have Streborg with Southwest Passage. So, you're probably familiar with Streborg, but if you're not, it's a one-man black metal band from Tasmania, which is minimalist and has an almost ambient quality. So just for your information, Tasmania is the offshore island of Australia. So you've got mainland Australia and that little triangle at the bottom, that is Tasmania. I mention that because I've got a friend from North America and he said to me, oh, I always thought that Tasmania was in New Zealand. No, it's like Australia, mainland, Tasmania, New Zealand, North and South Island. But yeah, I mean, we're all brothers, but I'm just distinguishing. Tasmania is Australia, yeah. So anyway, so this is kind of it's one-man black metal, and it's kind of minimalist and ambient, taking a lot of influence from early Darkthrone, like Under a Funeral Moon, and also aspects of Burzum, I think. And it's performed by an entity known as Sinnana, like his real name is Russell Menzies, but he described this music, he said, it's like mimicking the elements of Australian nature, like, what did he say, like the drums are the rocks in the ground, the guitars are the frost and snow and the vocals are the voice of the forest, so that would appeal to you. But like I said, it's very sort of minimalist black metal. So as he also said, it focuses on atmosphere and nothing else matters, as opposed to like perhaps memorable songs. But anyway, track 6, which is an eerie ambient instrumental outro entitled Requiem for a Lonely Ghost, that was featured on the One Man Metal documentary, and that sparked my interest. So if you're not familiar with the documentary One Man Metal, it's an insight into 3 black metal bands, which are Leviathan, Zaster, and Streborg. And as a result of watching that documentary, I became a fan of all 3 one-man black metal bands, including Streborg. And yeah, so in that, they show interviews with Russell, you know, walking around the forest and, you know, lighting candles in caves and screaming. It's really cool, walking around in corpse paint with a cloak and everything. But yeah, this track at the end, when they're doing the reflective part, they're showing images of the Tasmanian forest. And the track Requiem for a Lonely Ghost is playing, and it's kind of this woozy, eerie, foreboding, dark ambient track. And I thought, oh, that sounds brilliant to me, so it got me interested. This album has the perfect guitar sound and production with piercing and melodic melodies, kind of like early Darkthrone, but yeah, it features tracks which are more memorable in my opinion. Like I said, Streborg tends to focus just on atmosphere, but there are sort of memorable songs in this. Like, for example, Southwest Passage has some really unmistakable, unforgettable melodies, which I really like. And the other track I really like in this is Dwelling in the Full Moon Forest. So, but yeah, it's a really good album, and just a bit different because it's memorable. But the reason why it means something to me is that it's the album that sort of sparked my interest in Streborg from that documentary, with that track Requiem for a Lonely Ghost. So if you haven't heard Streborg, he's released so many albums, so like they're pretty much all good. Recently he sort of changed his style. He's now become sort of industrial black wave, but it's still sort of dark music, so that might appeal to some of you. One of my favorite Streborg albums, probably this one, and I also like The Foreboding Silence, but really you can't go wrong with Streborg. So yeah, they are my reasons why this one means a lot to me. So there you have it, guys. There are 4 albums which mean a lot to me, which were released when I was 30 years old. Sorry if I'm disqualified by not talking about 5, but as I said, I wanted to talk about albums which really mean something to me. And then I gave some examples of albums released in 2009 which don't mean a lot to me really, even though they still may be good. Okay, so that's it. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. I want to keep this relatively short and sweet. I didn't know how long this video was going to go on, but it's shorter than I anticipated, which is always good, especially for me. So hope you enjoyed the video, guys. And Geoff, congratulations once again on reaching 3,000 subscribers. Very well deserved. And yep, I've seen quite a few entries for this contest, so go and watch them. They're all really interesting. And like I said, even though I don't always comment on people's videos, doesn't mean I don't watch. So there you go. All right, so I think I have a rough idea of what I'm going to do next. I'm going to try and shoot a few more videos this week, so we'll just have to see what happens next. But in the meantime, take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers, bye.